He kōna I purangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
No mai whakarongo mai ki te aotai whenua. Welcome to Country Life. I'm Janina Schwanica.
Lovely to have your company. Thanks for joining us. Ko Sally Roundaho. Today we meet Rory Dean, a Scottish vet now working in Northland. He's written about some of his adventures in a new book.
We revisit Nova Trust's small farm near Christchurch. People needing rehab find putting their hands in the soil is helping them recover from their addictions.
And I'm taking you into a science lab to find out how stock feed can be made from hungry geothermal gas-eating microbes, helping to lower carbon emissions at the same time.
But first, as it's the beginning of the month, we'll take a whip around the country to find out how our farmers and orchardists are faring. Northland Te Tai Tokoro farmers welcomed some rain this week as the region had been getting dry. The rains also helped restore confidence in the store market, where buying had slowed. Prices are good, especially for male cattle. Dairy interest is also up compared to this time last year when the market was subdued. Feed is coming back on, there's enough around, but not big surpluses. In Pukekohe, a combination of wet and dry days has helped with crop growth, but many growers are still unhappy with returns. Early potatoes are now being harvested, pumpkins are being sown, thrip control in onions has commenced, and kiwi fruit growers are generally pleased to see good bud burst on the vines.
It's been a busy time for Waikato farmers, leaving them feeling pretty bushed. Most have finished their first round of AI, artificial insemination, and mating has gone reasonably well. Silage is coming off and maize crops are going in. Grass growth has been variable across the region, with cooler temperatures reducing pasture production. It's been quite a wet October. Our agent contact has tipped about 100 millimetres out of his rain gauge for the month.
Bay of Plenty kiwi fruit growers were left disappointed after reduced flower counts due to several cold snaps. The region is looking okay as a whole, but some growers have been significantly affected, with some down 40%. Many gold variety orchards are in full bloom, with our grower contact reporting a sea of white flowers. She says it's an exciting time of year, setting up for the next harvest. Things are better than last year for avocado growers, but some growers have been pulling out trees. There's lots of grass in Taranaki, where dairy farmers have been making silage and are planting maize. Most are right into mating. Cows are milking well and production's up. An increased payout is welcome news, and farmers are happier than they were a month ago. Our farmer contact says cull cows have been selling for record highs, along with in-milk cows. At a recent sale, they fetched an average of $3,500 each. He says school calf days are still going strong across the region.
Norwesterly winds have led to dry conditions across East Coast Te Tai Rāwhiti. It's the first time the region's been this dry since Cyclone Gabrielle struck last year, and means improved access on farm. Lamb survival rates have been good, and most farmers are through docking. There's still quality feed about, but some are nervous about further dry and a rise in temperatures over summer, which will bring parasites and fly strike, especially as there's been a rise in drench resistance. It was a question of what rain when we chatted with our farmer contact in Hawke's Bay. He's had about 15 millimetres over the last month. It'll be the third month in a row with below average rainfall. The grass browning off in parts and some river levels dropping off have farmers keeping a wary eye on things. There's not a lot of surplus feed for silage or hay, but there's still a bit left over from the previous season. The dry conditions have been good for growers, though. Arable farmers are also ticking along, though irrigators are going flat tack. A few farms have come onto the market recently, but there appears to be reduced interest from foresters.
Warm conditions have made for happy farmers in Manawatu Rangatike. Some recent rain has slowed the tractors down and has meant some couldn't cut baleage, but contractors have made good progress on other groundworks and cropping. Cows are milking well and the grass is growing. It's a similar story in Wairarapa. Hill country farmers took on less stock over the last few months, so are growing a lot more grass at the moment. They've been busy docking. Lamb numbers are down about 5 to 10% because of pregnancy scanning being down. Lamb survival rates, though, have been generally good. Across the Cook Strait to Whakatū, Tasman, the spring has been good for growing, with a decent bit of rainfall over the weekend. Our farmer reported about 50 millimetres of rain, which he says was welcomed by many, as parts of the region are also getting dry. There's reasonable pasture cover and stock are in good condition. especially cattle, with beef prices through the roof at recent yard sales. Sheep farmers are down in the dumps, though, over prices. There's likely to be an oversupply of hops this season, but apples are looking good.
Wine growers have finished pruning in Marlborough. The bud burst is about a week early this year. Flowering is still 2 to 3 weeks away for early varieties, and growers are hopeful there'll be no more frosts. It's also been a great spring for farmers, with enough rain to keep the grass ticking over. Our farmer contact had about 70 millimetres in the rain gauge over the weekend. Lambs are doing well and tailing's done. He expects the second half of the spring will be a boomer. West Coast farmers are heading into mating this week and the cows are cycling well. Most farmers have been trying to dodge the rain, which there's been plenty of. Our horticulture contact had 150 mils over the weekend. It's also been especially cold, with cows getting an extra feed out during milking at the shed. Cold snaps have kept the grass from growing, so milking is down a bit. Farmers in Canterbury, Waitaha have been battling dry conditions for the past 12 months, so rain over the long weekend will make a big difference, financially and mentally, and will give the region's morale a bit of a boost. Winter and summer forage crops are being sown and tractors of all shapes and sizes are busy. Our farmer hopes by the end of this week, maize, fodder beet and kale will have been sown.
It's been slow growing lambs in South Otago. One farmer estimates lambs normally headed to the works in November will be delayed at least a month following one of the hardest growing seasons. He says most have finished tailing with average results. Farmers are really struggling with poor price prospects, while on-farm costs keep on rising. Our contact says morale is the lowest it's been in 40 years of sheep farming. He's heard of late about 100,000 stock units which have been replaced by pine trees. And lastly, conditions are still reasonably challenging for farmers in Murihiku, Southland. Though they didn't get as much snow as Mackenzie country, recent weather still caused a mess. Some farmers have run out of silage, with palm kernel deliveries struggling to keep up, and contractor services also under pressure. Many have brought the calves back into the shed to avoid the worst of the weather. Our dairy farmer contact near Gore says it's been unprecedented and one of the toughest seasons in his 25 years. He reckons there'll be a lot of fatigue by Christmas and is worried many will leave the industry, with a potential labour shortage down the line. Despite this, cows are cycling well and he's just started his AI program.
This is Country Life on RNZ National 101 FM.
Our guest this week is Scottish vet Rory Dean, who now lives and works in rural Northland. He was inspired not only to work as a country vet, but to write about his experiences after working on farms in the UK and reading the James Herriot books, Tales of a Vet in the Yorkshire Dales. Rory's now written his own book, Adventures of a Country Vet.
I began working on farms in my teenage years, and then with reading James Herriot, it just seemed like the perfect career. And to some degree, James Herriot's writings also enthused me to write about my own stories as well.
Just reading some of your stories, it's pretty graphic. Prolapsed uteruses in ewes and a pig dog having to be stitched up. Who is your audience for the book?
The audience, I suppose, is pretty wide. There's obviously the rural communities and those people involved with those type of things. But I think there's an increasing population of people that are interested in rural life, that might live in more urban environments and are fascinated by those kind of things.
It's not just about the operations that you perform. There are all sorts of stories that you tell, and some of those are about the characters that you've met.
That's probably my favourite part of writing, is the characters I've met and the friendships that I've developed along the way. Telling stories about them, their care and devotion to their animals has been amazing. Some of the interactions, as it talks about in the book, haven't been great, and that's been a real challenge too.
Yes, somebody threatened to shoot you. What happened there?
Yes, that was a particularly nasty presentation, an obstetric presentation where I was unable to get the calf out. We tried all different sorts of procedures, and in the end the cow was going to be euthanized. And I was informed that there was a bullet for the cow and a bullet for myself, which was a lovely thing to hear at 11 p.m. on a rainy winter's evening.
Because you must work all hours, and you do get call-outs at night, don't you?
Absolutely. It wouldn't be uncommon to work into the evening looking after a patient especially in mixed practice, to then be out pregnancy testing cattle first thing in the morning. And that can present real challenges for vets in practice.
Yes, it must take a toll on you personally, that sort of physical challenge as well. You talk about vomiting as you're doing one of these operations, which was particularly gruesome. But that was after a bit of a difficult night yourself, wasn't it?
Yes, I've discussed in one chapter about having to work while I was battling food poisoning. But I think as well as the physical toll, there's the mental toll. And people are increasingly aware of that, and it's great now that more and more vets are seeking support for compassion fatigue and their own mental health, which is super.
You write about hearing the crack of the rifle to put a cow or a horse out of its misery, and your mood sinks. These are very candid thoughts. Was it difficult to write about?
Absolutely, yes. It's very challenging to explain how that feels, and it's hard to understand it unless you're in that particular situation yourself. There's obviously the sense of failure as a professional, although it's the right thing to do often. And there's the obvious concern for the animal.
But there are the lighter sides too. And what has brought you joy as a vet?
Oh, it's the best job in the world, don't doubt it. I love building relationships with people in the areas I work with, farmers and members of the community, and seeing animals respond and get better is really energizing.
And you must have made some great friends as well, out of your clients.
Absolutely.
How much time do you spend having cups of tea with your clients?
Probably more than I should. I think it's a really important part of the job, and it's often when the real problems and issues on farms present themselves. And I've discussed this at length in my book, but the sick calves that the vet might have been seeing might be a result of a staff shortage, which is due to a member of the family being sick. And only by sitting down and listening and being sympathetic can you understand those things. As much as we're trained medically to treat those animals and make them better, it's understanding what's going on at a deeper level that's really important, I think.
So you worked briefly in the UK as a vet, and you've spent most of your career here in New Zealand now. What are the differences that you're seeing?
There's quite significant differences in farming systems. Obviously, there's a lot more cattle kept housed in the UK, and there's a lot more grazing systems in New Zealand. But the shortage of rural veterinarians is replicated worldwide. It's the same in the UK as it is in New Zealand, and it appears to be similar in Australia, Canada. It's a really difficult issue for the profession to manage, encouraging vets into rural practice, and it's a shame because it really is a brilliant job.
It must be quite isolating driving these quite lonely rural roads, and you might often be meeting only a few people in a day. What are the challenges there?
I suppose it is isolating to some degree, but if I am isolated, I'm generally experiencing stunning views of the harbour or the hills. Yes, there's a particular spot I always make sure I stop at when I'm driving around, actually overlooking the harbour, and I take a moment and get out of the car with my dogs and just really take it in and feel very lucky to be in the job that I am.
You have a couple of dogs, don't you?
Yes, Alfie and Scrappy. They're my companions and supervisors. They're really good. They're really special. They're not quite up to nursing yet, but they're very good companions.
Rural vet Rory Dean. His book Adventures of a Country Vet is published by HarperCollins NZ. And a portion of the book's royalties is going to the Rural Youth and Adult Literacy Trust.
We're dipping into the Country Life archives now and heading to a rehab centre on a small farm near Christchurch. At Nova Trust, people with alcohol, drug and other addictions or challenges find putting their hands in the soil helps them towards recovery. Cosmo Kentish-Barnes paid the centre a visit last year and first caught up with Nova Trust Chief Executive Steve Rossell.
Nova Trust is situated on about 30 hectares of prime land on what used to be the old Templeton Hospital site. So our main buildings in terms of our rehabilitation services are, in actual fact, the old nurses' accommodation and admin block.
Tell me about these services you provide here.
Well, the trust was developed back in 1981 and founded by what was a local builder and businessman and some colleagues from Christchurch. Don Malcolm was the original founder and was the chair for, I think, the first 20 odd years. So the services that we operate now are primarily focused on responding to the needs of those with addiction. So the purpose of the organisation, the trust itself, is to create pathways to a better life and recovery for those affected by alcohol and drug addiction and other life challenges. So we operate 3 residential services on the same site, each with a slightly different client group or FIORA group. And we work with about 100, 120 residents come through the service each year.
Yes, and I guess you have quite a few staff working here.
Yeah, we've got about 40 staff, sort of full-time equivalent staff. Most of those staff are working within the residential treatment and recovery services. And then we have a team of paid staff that work in the horticulture, social enterprise and the native nursery.
Where does the funding come from to run Nova Trust?
Right, the bulk of our core funding is contracted with Health NZ, Te Whatu Ora, previously the Ministry and the DHBs, and we get small amounts of charitable income. And then for the social enterprises, they operate very much as commercial businesses, and the revenue received obviously funds the operations of those social enterprises, the horticulture and native plant nursery. And the plan is that funding also supports and underpins some of the health funding.
How great that those social enterprises are handy for the trust in terms of raising funds, but also are great for the service users, I guess, in terms of their rehabilitation.
Yeah, I mean, it's an integral part of what we do in terms of the horticultural farming and the native nursery, in as much as they provide life and employment skills opportunities or the development of skills around, general life and living, whether that's cooking, cleaning, looking after yourself, but also that experience of the workaday routines that fit them very well for reintegrating back into the community post-treatment.
Kia ora, my name's Boyd Warren. I'm the commercial manager here at Nova Trust. I oversee the social enterprises, the farm, indoor growing, outdoor growing and the native plant nursery.
And Boyd, the residents work on the farm with you?
Absolutely. The life and employment skills component of the recovery program is really neat to be involved with. The FIORA volunteer between 12 and 15 hours a week while they're on site and work alongside the team.
What does a normal day involve?
Or checking on the livestock, working with the team on any issues they've got in terms of things they need to do their jobs, and dealing with customers for the native plant nursery and for the fresh produce, potentially talking to a stock agent, seed merchant. Yeah, pretty varied.
And so you have commercial partners?
We do. We're very well supported by the 2 main markets, Turners and Growers and MG. They've really bought into the Nova kaupapa, particularly the life and employment skills aspect, and great partners to us. Yeah.
Does some of the produce that's grown here end up in supermarkets?
Absolutely. We get great support actually from Foodstuffs locally. They buy our fresh chilies, which you'll see soon, and My Food Bag also support us by putting our cucumbers into their menus quite regularly. So yeah, we've got I guess you'd call it a competitive advantage, and in fact we've got a very worthy purpose in what we do that underpins not just the vegetable and beef production, but the life and employment skills program, helping FIORA get well and re-enter community.
So you've got Nova Fresh. What about Nova Natives?
Sure, Nova Natives grows, unsurprisingly, native plants, and we do a lot of contract growing for Fulton Hogan. So they're big projects where they're doing infrastructure work around quarries, roads, all sorts of amenity planting. Quite often the plants will come from here. I think we've probably supplied them 100,000 plants in the last couple of years, so not insignificant numbers.
So this farming social enterprise is providing important revenue for the whole trust.
Yep, completely intertwined financially. The support program couldn't operate, I don't think, without the social enterprise, and certainly the social enterprise couldn't operate without the support program. So, yeah, it's a completely simpatico relationship.
We are standing beside several paddocks and we can see some cattle in the distance. What sort of breed are they?
We have got some Frisian steers over there. We're very lucky, the trust attracts some really lovely support from local dairy farmers who will give us a few steer calves every year. And then over to our left there, you can see a cultivated paddock where we've got 2.8 hectares of beetroot, which will be ready for harvest from mid-December. And this paddock we're standing right in front of has just been sprayed off. It's another 2.5 hectares. It'll also be going into beetroot.
Why beetroot?
We are good at growing beetroot, and we've got markets for it as well.
So you'll produce what, tonnes?
Yeah, in the hundreds of tonnes.
Where are we heading to now?
We are going to head over to our indoor growing where you'll see all our cucumbers and chilies.
We are approaching a huge set of tunnel houses here.
Yeah, we've got 7 tunnel houses across the site, so that accounts for about 8,000 square metres of tunnel housing.
Now we've just come into one of the tunnel houses and the cucumber plants here are 2 metres tall.
Yeah, they're 2 metres tall, so these are probably coming towards the end of their sort of growing cycle, so they've got probably a week or two more to do.
And on each plant there are several cucumbers.
Yeah, these look pretty ready to be picked off the vine at the moment.
You must have trucks coming here quite regularly to pick up produce.
We have our own truck, we take it directly to the market, so the produce that we grow here, we sort of manage the whole process from seed all the way to the supermarket shelves. And the resident population are involved in all aspects of that, certainly in terms of the horticulture, which is great because they can see something literally grow from seed to something they then go and buy in the supermarket, which is huge impact on self-esteem for someone involved in all of that process.
How long do people stay here on average?
Most of the residents or Fiora that we have coming for treatment and recovery are staying probably 12 weeks. We have programs operating 3 to 6 months, and we have another service that operates a placement program of 8 weeks. And that's working with some of the most severely addicted resident population in the country, actually.
Now I can see Harry, the production manager, down between the cucumbers. How's it going, Harry?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Good, thanks. So tell me what your day-to-day role is.
So like in our day-to-day role, in summer we do the picking every alternate day, like Monday, Wednesday and Friday. And on other days we have to train the plant, so we do the winding, then we have to remove the tendrils and other extra fruits and the laterals, and we have to train our plants for good productions. So that's our regular duty, otherwise we picking them and we also reduce the leaf load on the plant as well. Yeah.
How do you work in the residents into the production process?
Yep. Like I try to find out like what's he like or she likes and what she don't like, and on the basis of that, or even I also try to find out like what their past background, and then I find out like, okay, the person gonna shoots over here, and then I slowly introduce them. I find out like few residents, once they finish their course, they are like a good horticulturist. Yeah, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, so you can just see through the plastic there that they've just been planted by the look of it. Well, this is where we grow our chilies, and it sounds like some of the Fiora have got the beats on to get the work pumping and keep the motivation up. Let's go and check it out.
Yeah.
These are capsicum annuum but cayenne pepper. So they're replacement chili plants just coming on. You can see some of the larger ones, the older ones over there, they're in full fruit at the moment.
How often do you harvest the chilies?
Yeah, chilies are harvested on the same rotation as the cucumbers, 3 times a week in summer, twice a week in winter when it's a bit cooler. Yeah, harvest them from about 8 centimetres.
What's the most popular coloured chili?
Yeah, I understand that about 90% of all the chilies sold in New Zealand are red, but we actually focus on the green ones just because we're smaller. That's a wee niche we can kind of carve out.
Hi Sam. What are you up to in here?
I'm pretty much just taking some leaves off the chilies so that they can keep growing, and yeah.
Nice job.
It is, it's relaxing, therapeutic.
Have you tasted these chilies that you're working on?
No, I hate spices.
Where are you from?
I'm from Tauranga.
And how long have you been at Nova?
I've been here 2.5 weeks.
And what's your story? How did you end up here?
Pretty much through alcohol addiction. Yeah, so we don't have a lot of facilities up in Tauranga to be able to help with that. So yeah, pretty much came down here to sort life out.
Are you enjoying this plant and growing aspect to your recovery?
Definitely. I think if it wasn't there, I wouldn't be able to cope, really. I think it gives it another dynamic to be able to get out and about and do something like this. And I thought, well, if I enjoy it, that's going to help with my recovery.
What were you doing before you came here? What sort of work?
I'm a plasterer by trade, but the body's getting a bit too old now, so got to take a step back and think about what I enjoy, and this is definitely it.
What are your goals once you've had some time out here?
I think maybe just to go home and be more present, really, and get back into work and enjoy life as it should be without waking up every day thinking of alcohol and stuff like that.
Yes. Has it been a challenge getting off the booze?
Yeah, very much so. Very much. It's one of those addictions you don't think is that bad, but it's definitely a life changer, physically and mentally, especially when you're young.
Now, Boyd, you are contract growing some chilies here, and these are the hot ones.
Yeah, very hot. It's probably too hot for me. We've got the Scotch bonnet and the chocolate butler and the habanero red. But this is our first go at these, and they don't seem to strike as quickly or as successfully as the commercial avatar that we normally grow. But they're coming away.
Who are you growing those for?
A local hot sauce maker called Spicy Boys.
We're behind the tunnel houses now, and I guess this is the Nova Natives area that we're approaching.
Yeah, that's right. This is the planting out area for Nova Natives, and we can see our expert plant man Jake over there amongst the Plagianthus regius.
Good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad.
So what is your role here, Jake?
I'm production coordinator, so that's basically just in charge of all the production and crop care of the nursery itself and propagation as well. Yeah.
What have you got growing?
Mostly re-veg type plants, so a lot of ribbonwoods, griselinias, muehlenbeckias, beech trees, pittosporums, cabbage trees, flaxes, all your usual suspects.
And some of the plants are up to 1 metre tall. They must be ready to go in the ground.
Yeah, we've got a lot of stuff sort of waiting on landscapers to really get going, depending on their site works and when they're ready to plant.
Do landscapers contact you? How does it work?
Yeah, they usually contact us a few weeks in advance to let us know that they're going to be planting, and then we'll get the plants ready for sale, and they'll come and pick them up.
By the end of the year, how many plants would you have sent off?
Last year we probably maybe 30 or 40,000, but that's increasing every year. The nursery is only a couple of years old, so we're still in the sort of start-up phase.
Yes.
But we recently secured a big growing contract with the Christchurch City Council, so we're trying to sort of plan for that.
It must be satisfying for you having, recovering addicts growing plants and working with them.
Absolutely. Plants are my first passion, but, since working here, that's been a real eye-opener, and just seeing how much horticulture can actually impact on people's lives, even if it's just something as simple as getting up every morning, doing a wee bit of physical exercise, and that, forms them to a good mental state as well. So that's been a real rewarding part of my job.
I can see a couple of people working on the other side of the natives. Are they residents?
Yeah, So those are two of my crew, Tony and Peter. So they've been doing a lot of the weeding at the moment. They were doing a lot of potting up, but the potting up sort of slowed down at the moment. So we're just trying to get on top of the weeds before they explode.
Yeah, weeding is one of those jobs that no one wants to do, but it has to be done.
Yeah, that's one of the drawbacks of horticulture is weed control. It's always very time consuming.
Hi, my name's Peter. I'm from Christchurch, and I sort of came in about 6 weeks ago, and I came here mainly because it involved horticultural work as well as some rehab. And, it's a nice vista everywhere. It's nice to look round.
I can see a skiff of snow through the hedges over there on the mountains.
Yeah, the snow doesn't last that long, but I think it's having the animals round as well. It's familiar, having the smell of sheep, cattle and sheep.
How did you end up here? What are you recovering from?
I'm recovering from drugs and alcohol. Not particularly one or the other, but a lot of them. And I went through some trauma a long time ago, a lot of things I didn't deal with. I haven't always been in this position. I've had successful jobs where I've had to be responsible. I've travelled overseas. But I just isolated myself till I was just drinking every day and doing other drugs. But I couldn't handle going to a rehab where it's just education. So this is why this place appealed to me. And also we eat really well here. So if you combine all those things of being outside, doing some horticulture, having the classes in the afternoon, which I don't really need, but you do get to care about people and mix with people you wouldn't normally see.
Boyd, you must strike up some good friendships with the residents who come here and work with you.
Yeah, you do. Many of them are really endearing and, but they're here for 3 months and then gone. So, yeah, but certainly a lot of them touch your heart while they're here.
Yeah.
Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Shannon.
I said if you're going to talk to anyone, you're going to talk to Shannon.
Oh, yeah, she'll give me something to talk about.
What are you doing today, Shannon?
Today we are planting little baby cucumbers, putting our magic in. And they actually grow quite long, like Jack and Beanstalk, They're beautiful.
Do you love working with plants?
I love working with plants, yes. Coming in, I had lost contact with how much I really love it. And it's a real joy to watch something grow. It's kind of like self-growth, you get to learn to start from a seed again and regrow.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Do you get to taste some of the food that you've been growing?
Oh, I sure do. Not only do we taste it, but every now and then we'll get some cucumbers. And, us girls will have a night where we put the cucumbers on our eyes and then we'll take beauty tips from the boys. Note to self, don't do it because they made us cover our faces in cucumbers and chilies. And they said the longer it's on there, the better. So we woke up in the morning and we're quite wrinkled up and we're like so mad at the boys, but it was our fault, right? Taking advice from male for beauty tips? What?
Yeah, note to self, don't put chilies on face.
That's right, it still burns.
Shannon, what's your story? Where are you from and how did you end up coming down here to Nova Trust?
I'm from Tauranga and I am an addict. And I chose this program specifically because we work with plants. Around the North Island and the South Island, this is actually the only rehab centre that offers you to put your hand in the dirt and get in touch with the whenua, and it grounds us. And so I love the people here. I love what they have to offer. Boyd is awesome. Keeps me on my toes. Yeah.
How long have you been here?
I have been here for 6 weeks now.
And when will you go home?
I will go home on the 23rd of November. Yeah, really excited about it, but at the same time have grown such a community here and such a bigger family. And so it's going to be sad to leave, but also good to leave, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a nice social atmosphere here. You've made friends.
Yeah, more than friends, lifetime friends, if I can say that. Yeah, being with others around you that are struggling with the same type of things helps you to feel comfortable within your own skin and understand yourself and also grow within yourself, just like the plants.
Was it quite challenging being here for the first few days, obviously facing up to your addiction?
Yeah, it was. Coming from the North Island, I knew that not only was I stepping away from my family and going away from my children for the longest I ever have, but also a completely new island. And I was so scared, but I knew I needed it. and I knew I wanted it. I wanted it that bad that I was willing to just be alone in a whole new, complete environment. And they accept me with open arms, the staff, everybody.
There's a really good vibe here.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? A real funky one over here.
Tell me about your children.
My children, I have a 22-year-old, 19-year-old, 18-year-old and a baby who's 6. And we're all best friends, and sadly they had to watch their mum struggle, and what woke me up was actually seeing the pain in their eyes and the fear. They weren't angry at me, they weren't judging me, they were scared because they wanted their mum back.
Yeah, because they love you.
That's right. And to come from children who love you that much to support me through this journey made it that much easier. And they always say to me, like, I'll send them photos of us in these gardens and that, and they're like, Mum, it's more like you're on camp than you're at rehab. You seem like you're having so much fun. I'm like, yeah, we are. Yes. If I'm honest, I thought I was going to be sitting in a corner shaking for like 3 months, Yeah. But no, actually, this place has helped me to grow and to love myself for who I am and to accept myself, which is amazing.
If you don't mind me asking, what drug are you rehabilitating from?
Methamphetamine, cannabis and alcohol. Yep.
And how is that going?
It's going great. I have learnt that I know within myself I can't touch these things. I've tried to do it by myself before, and sometimes it doesn't work for us. Sometimes we have to step out and take this self-reflection journey on our own and find ourselves, because sometimes we're easily influenced, as I am. I tend to go with the flow, and I'm quite impulsive too, like, yeah, let's do that. But now I'm learning that my impulsiveness isn't always a great thing. It can lead me astray. So this place is helping me to get to know what Shannon wants and who Shannon is and what she wants in her future. Yeah.
Can you see yourself working in the horticultural industry in the future?
I can. Absolutely. It's a beautiful skill to gain, and it's really I'm a really bad singer, but I love singing. You probably heard me. But the plants don't complain, they're my besties.
Apparently music actually helps plants to grow.
Even if it's sung badly.
Oh, lovely. Oh, well, thank you so much for chatting to me, Shannon. And what's on the agenda for the rest of the day?
For the rest of the day, after here, we have lunch and we eat these little babies and our salads, and then we have our skills program in the afternoon, and then gym.
Gym?
Yeah.
So you're pumping weights?
Yeah, pumping weight. And then we also do a lot of walking, and we go down and feed horses, even though they don't like cucumbers very much, fussy. But yeah, it just grows you, this place. There's so much to offer here, more than people actually know.
One of the residents at Nova Trust at Templeton in Canterbury. That piece, produced by Cosmo Kentish Barnes, was from our archives last year.
I'm Robin Green, I live at Tehoro Beach, and I have to say that Country Life was one of my favourite programs. Country Life on RNZ National.
Next on Country Life, I'm taking you to a science lab in New Zealand's geothermal heartland of Rotorua.
Oh, so we've got to our lab coats.
Okay. Thank you. I paid a visit to the Crown Research Institute Scion to talk to the scientists and collaborators hoping to create a new industry that might help lower carbon emissions and feed the world's growing population by essentially creating stock feed from bugs. Microbes chowing down on waste gas from geothermal plants is key to the technology, which it's estimated could reap $500 million a year for New Zealand by 2045. I've just put on my lab coat, and we're just going to go into one of the labs here at Scion just to see what's actually happening at the moment in terms of the research, and glasses are going on too.
It's going to get very noisy over there.
Scion's microbial biotech team lead, Christophe Collet, is showing me what stage they're at.
These are our mini bioreactors, and as you can see, there's 4 of them, so we can test slightly different conditions. And we are using gas substrates that come over here, that contain CO2, and it's being fed into the bioreactors. And here you can see we can monitor so many different parameters like temperature, oxygen, dissolved oxygen, and how much CO2 is coming out in the off gas, how much is being used, and we can trend how well the biomass is growing.
The protein-rich organic material jiggling around in the bioreactors is generated by some tough little bugs, a bacteria and an algae found in geothermal areas, which consume carbon dioxide and methane, two of the gases that just happen to be responsible for global warming.
Is that the biomass in that, what looks like a smoothie bottle, bubbling away?
And you can see it's slightly pinkish.
Yes.
So that means there's a good amount of biomass in there. So that means we are ready for harvesting very soon.
So the gas is what's flowing in there and making it bubble up and swirl around?
That's correct. The high pitch is the stirring for mixing. So we get a good gas transfer from the gas bubble to the microbes so they can eat it more efficiently.
It's kind of like what happens in those boiling mud pools and springs we see around the volcanic plateau.
They're basically munching away on the gas.
That's correct.
And then what happens?
So once we are happy with our best conditions here, we can reproduce the similar conditions in the larger bioreactor. And that will give us already a step closer to the larger bioreactor we want to build in Taupo at the geothermal plant. So we are starting already the scale up here in the laboratory, and then when we are happy with our results, we can transfer to the larger bioreactors to be built.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's find out how the whole idea started about a decade ago.
Yeah, no, there were nerds that were going through bioprospecting all of the geothermal hot springs and ground as a project called 1,000 Springs.
This is Andy Blair of the geothermal research and innovation company Upflow, which is helping bring the project to fruition.
They were sampling these hot springs and steaming ground for microbes, and so they had a whole library of information about microbes and thought, yeah, what can we do with these things? They exist in these hot springs and these environments together naturally, and they're used to the gases that exist there naturally, and so they do this as a natural process. So geothermal environments can be toxic, high temperature, a whole lot of things that make them what we call extremophiles. So they live in extreme environments, and those bodily adaptations are useful for biotech. And so that's why, we're looking for solutions in the world using those bodily adaptations and the way that they function.
And that led to the idea of turning the protein-rich biomass produced by the greenhouse gas-eating microbes into something useful and nutritious, like stock feed, turning something that's a problem into something of value. Here's Scion's Alec Foster.
So the feed would look like pellets. We would effectively spin down the cells in a big fermenter and would get like a mass, and we'd dry that out and we'd pelletize it. So just as you feed pellets to chickens or to various sorts of animals, that's the type of product we would make. But we'd also be able to possibly make some higher value products as well. So those higher value products could be supplements, could go into all sorts of different applications, nutraceuticals, and these represent another real high value opportunity which we're going to be exploring.
And what sort of nutritional value would these pellets have, say, for chickens or sheep?
They've got a spectrum of amino acids, and those amino acids are essential. We tend to think of it as being maybe a bit unusual to be eating bacteria, but actually animals do it every day. One animal eats another, which eats another, and eventually you get to a cow. And this is effectively the same nutritional content, and it's something which animals actually quite like to eat.
How expensive would it be for farmers?
We would expect it to be at least price competitive to what's existing on the market.
And when might they be able to buy this stuff?
That's a good question. I would hope within 5 to 10 years that we'd be able to make it commercial.
Could it be used for dairy cows as a replacement for palm kernel, for instance?
Possibly, yes. We'd have to do analysis on cows to actually see whether it is beneficial. That's also part of what we're going to be doing, is analysing how do different animals respond to the different feedstocks.
Have you tested it on animals yet?
We've only done it with mice trials at the moment. From memory, the weights were comparable or better with our feed. So that the mice were happy to eat it, and they bulked up just as they would with normal feed.
Part of the initial uses of gases is where we formed the idea, but we also learnt that in 2018, 3 million tonnes of feed was imported into New Zealand from two major locations, which is Sumatra and Borneo. And we knew that they come from palm oil plantations, and That was quite horrifying for us to hear, that New Zealand, that pride ourselves as a clean, green production country and doing smart, making ethical decisions, was contributing to such a large-scale deforestation and other activities. And there's so much carbon loaded in the transport of that to New Zealand. And we thought, when we were looking at, what the bugs can do and what they make, we thought, here's an opportunity to target some of that. We're not sure yet if it's going to be bulk enough to really get in the way of PKE, but we definitely know it's going to add something of value to value feed. So it might not be a bulk offering, but it might be, add to the specialist sort of areas of, what's important in feed and for premium feed products.
Back in the lab, I wanted to find out what the stuff looked like.
It looks like a bit of a pinkish jelly. So it looks like food grade, actually, like you would be tempted to use it in your kitchen.
Yeah, a good example would be Marmite. That's effectively yeast extract. So that's effectively what we're doing. So instead of ours being brown, ours is a nice pink colour that animals like to eat.
Depends if the two microbes are kept together, but if they're separated, they are two very distinct colours. One is pinkish and the other one is dark green.
Looks like icing. Plasticky looking icing.
Oh yeah,
like you could age
like you could go.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's the wet paste before drying.
So whether it's pellets or powder, we're waiting for the market to tell us. We think pellets because in our brain we think animals eat pellets. That's because we're not animal scientists. But the market's going to tell us how they want to receive it and what it looks like. Cows might like Marmite, who knows? And if they want it, I'm sure we can give it to them in Marmite.
They might want it in a block that they can lick.
That's
perhaps.
right. Who knows? Yeah.
As Christophe mentioned, the various partners in this project are now intent on scaling up, getting out of the lab and building a pilot plant where real geothermal gases would be used to generate much bigger quantities of the product.
Our goal is that we stand up a project here in New Zealand. We produce something to be added to feedstock for local feed in New Zealand, and it could be for dairy, it could be for poultry, it could be for salmon. We're not sure yet, that's part of the question. And then we plug it into 10 geothermal power stations in New Zealand, and we produce our New Zealand's feed from that. And then our ultimate goal is to deploy that overseas. And so we can produce food in market. So let's plug into geothermal power stations in the US, in Indonesia, in China, in Europe, so that we can still be an export food country that's decarbonised. Because New Zealand produces food for 40 million people a year, and people eat animals. And so we want to support that protein access to food global deployment plan. We need to understand how to manage different gas compositions from every different power station. They're always different. We need to look at the middle and the technologies, whether we're using, photobioreactors, fermenters, how do we put them together to produce the sort of output that we need. Then we also need to understand the marketplaces. So where is it meaningful for this kind of material, in which market, and how do we deliver it?
Would you envisage, say, big fermenters set up around the place?
Could be one thing that we make, could be different bits of kit. The problem is not what does the kit look like, it's what can we produce, and then how can we produce it as an meaningful and relevant economic place.
A Māori-owned trust, Tauhara North No. 2, and the Ministry for Primary Industries have gone in 50-50 to fund the $5 million 4-year project to figure out whether and how it can become commercially viable.
Andy, what difference will this make if it comes to fruition at scale?
This will decarbonise feed production in Aotearoa and an option for the world, and it will mean that we can feel good about participating in ecosystems, food production systems that are not harming the planet that we want to have in the future. So for us, it's about offering a decarbonised, meaningful commercial operation that is sustainable and good for planet and people.
For me, it's really New Zealand positioning itself at the forefront of food and feed. We can be global leaders in such technology, and I think this is key as we move forward. Being able to capture carbon dioxide, being able to generate new and innovative products is essential. So I think this is fantastic, and I think it really does put us at the leading edge.
Alec Foster. Before joining Scion, he led one of Europe's largest synthetic biology programs, developing new materials with genetically engineered microorganisms. But he says the process outlined in the story doesn't rely on genetic engineering or gene editing at all, simply the natural microbes eating the gas. I was also talking to Andy Blair of Upflow and Christophe Collet, also from Scion.
And that's it for this episode of Country Life. Do let us know your feedback by emailing country@rnz.co.nz.
Click follow on your app if you don't want to miss an episode of the programme. And if you enjoyed the podcast, we'd love you to give us a plug on social media or tell a friend about the show. Click the share button in this app to send the episode to a friend.
The stories in this episode were produced and presented by me, Janina Schwanecker, Sally Round and Cosmo Kentish Barnes. In the studio production team today, David Knowles and Phil Benj.
Catch you next time.
Ka kite.